Today, we have the pleasure of being joined by Shalia Phillips, founder and principal consultant at S&P Nonprofit Consulting. With over a decade of experience, she supports nonprofit growth through grant writing, program development, and public policy. A respected speaker and a published author and expert. She's been featured in Forbes, Neon One, and more. Shalia is passionate about empowering communities with excellence and integrity. So with that, Shalia, I'll go ahead and pass it to you to get us kicked off here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. I am honored to be here, and thank you so much to Bonterra for trusting me with this session and coming to share my thoughts on navigating grant writing in this crazy landscape with you all. And welcome, welcome, welcome to our audience, our participants. I do not take it lightly it's lunch where we are, Ashley, but whether it's morning or going into the late afternoon for you, thank you so much for spending this hour with us. Again, we don't take this lightly, and I'm so appreciative of it. So let me share my screen and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, if you can see my screen, can you all just drop a thumbs up in the chat? Or Ashley, can you be my thumbs up for today? Awesome. So again, welcome to our session on navigating grant writing, building stronger proposals and fundable relationships. Although Ashley did an amazing job in introducing me, I love to go over just a few things to help you all get to know me. I may be a new face, or you've probably seen me around LinkedIn or Instagram. So it's going to allow you to get to know me better. The first thing you should know is that I love my job. For the past 10 years, I started right after grad school. I've been helping nonprofits grow their fundraising, particularly grant making efforts, and raise more money through institutional grants and sustainable fundraising strategies. So think all things applications, multi-year grants, rapid response funds, federal and state grants. I've had experience with them all. I'm a self-taught intern. What a lot of folks don't know is that I'm a biologist by trade. So I started out in labs, realized that I'm I'm introverted, but I love people. And when you work in a lab, you go in when the sun is down, you come out when the sun is coming down. There's not a lot of people you can interact with. So I wanted to not only continue to do health research, but I wanted to help people and navigate and, engage with people on a day-to-day basis. Somehow, some way through an internship, landed in grant writing, and it turned into a full-time job. And today I'm proud to announce that we've secured over $5.5 million. I say and counting because I'm horrible at keeping up with that, y'all. But as soon as I get an update, I'll let you know. And we've secured of course, myself and my company, we've secured grants for initiatives like early childhood education, youth development, workforce development, recidivism prevention, and all types of community development programs. So you can see by the results that I really do enjoy the work and the folks that I work with. And last but not least, I probably watch too much TV. And I am always watching some show that is new to me, but old to everyone else so that I can binge watch it. And then I'm upset when the new season is either a year away or it's canceled. So in the chat, if you know of any type of Marvel shows, crime dramas, things like that, drop it in the chat for me. I'm going to take a screenshot and add it to my list while I have some downtime this summer. So feel free. But yeah, I just want to share those thoughts with you all so you can get to know me better and we can navigate the next couple of slides. All right, so let's talk about why you're here. It's obvious you want to win grants, right? But you also probably feel overwhelmed because you may not know the first thing about grants, but want to add them to your nonprofit's fundraising strategy. You could also, and this is a very real emotion, feel frustrated, stretched thin, and disappointed with all of the changes in the federal grant landscape that we've been experiencing since the top of this year. And then tired of trying to keep winning grants when your proposals receive declines again and again. So if this is you, no worries. I'm going to take the next couple of minutes or so to navigate you through some thoughts, tips, and tricks, and just overall strategies that I share with my clients one-on-one on how to adjust your approach for private and federal grants. Building funder relationships to lead to long-term support. So think about multi-year grants and just funding that you don't have to worry about so often. Advocating for capacity building and multi-year funding. And then we're going to finish off our time together with just avoiding some common mistakes that could get your applications tossed out the ring. Oh, and if you stick around to the end, we do have a freebie. So make sure you stick around for that. Click the QR code and we'll talk about that shortly. All right, so to start off, I want to talk about tailoring your strategies to navigate the private and federal landscape. So, in order to enhance our grant seeking strategy, we must be specific, nimble, and flexible with our approach, depending on the specific type of funder that you're targeting. So, think about how you would approach, we'll say, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation versus the Department of Education or Department of, the federal entities. We want to make sure that we're aligning with that. And here are a couple of things that I want to share with you so that you can understand the key differences, particularly in 2025 as we're navigating all of these changes. So as you can see, I did some comparisons for you all. And starting with the application styles, we all know private grants, those community foundation grants, and even corporate grants are generally streamlined, narrative driven. They're short or shorter. The largest private grant I've probably written landed at 20 pages, but that was after I put in all of my responses to the prompts. And as we all know, when you go to the federal grant side, that can be anywhere between like 90 to 125 pages, and that just depends. So anytime you're looking at the type of grant that you want to go after, I always encourage my clients to consider your capacity. Private grants are always going to take a shorter time than your federal grants, just in the nature of how much work goes into crafting a compelling application. Next, I want you to think about funding size. So one thing that makes federal grants so attractive is that they're larger and they often have a full cost coverage. Whereas private grants, they're smaller, can have specific red tape depending on the funder's priorities. But I do see an increase in some trends that, we'll go over shortly that I think would be of interest to you in getting more flexibility with private funders. Next, love it again, flexibility. With private grants, they have a lot of flexibility because you're working more with, I like to say, people to people. Funders have program officers, they have folks who are out in the community, so you're able to navigate implementing a grant in a way that still meets their priorities, the metrics that you put in the grant proposal, but it's much easier to have that conversation if and when things go wrong. However, with federal grants, you typically have a rigid compliance and scope because that is mapped out by the federal government, of course. So while things do change, of course, we've seen that with the administration change. I actually have a client right now who needed to delegate their funding in other areas, but it was still aligned with the focus, and they were able to do that simply because again, those changes were rapid and no one wants to return, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We all want to make an impact in the community. So it was helpful to see that there was some flexibility, just not as much as you would probably see with a private grant. When it comes to relationships, again, those private grants are personal. You have ongoing engagement simply because they're a bit more accessible, whether that's through those funder visits, whether that's through reporting. But when it comes to federal grants, it's more formal and you have limited interaction. And last but not least, I thought that this would be helpful is to share about timelines. So for everyone in the room, I know that we all had at some point, whether we were beginning our journey or just listening to what I like to say, the word out on social media streets, grants are not fast funding. So when you think about your diverse revenue streams, it's not going to be like you can put out a campaign and then within 24 hours, we're able to raise $5,000. But when it comes to grants, they're a long game and more of a, I love to cook. So think of it like a crock pot meal. We have to put more intention. We have to make space for more time to start seeing some of those favorable outcomes. For us here at S&P, we typically start seeing a return on investment with our clients within 6 months, and then within a year, really building that track, because it takes time to find grants, it takes time to apply for grants, build relationships, and then it actually takes funders time to make those funding decisions. So with private grants, it's typically faster. You'll learn, or excuse me, you'll learn of their outcome or their funding decision within 3 months or so. But with federal grants, it's longer timelines according to a fixed schedule. And sometimes, as I've seen more recently, with that long timeline, they can actually move the funding award to a time in the future or cancel it altogether. So those are just some differences that I want you all to consider as you're thinking about adding private grants or even removing or just adjusting what type of grants are in your fundraising strategy. Now, what does that mean for us in the nonprofit space? So to succeed with private grants, you need to stay nimble, pitch innovative, sustainable, and emerging programs, and maintain regular communication with funders, which we'll talk about shortly. You should also be listening closely to any shifts in their interest and be ready to pivot, because although they're not shifting as fast as the federal landscape, there are some shifts going on. So just keep your ear to the streets. With federal grants, we want to make sure that we're aligning our proposals to their priorities and any changes that they're having internally, whether that's focus, geographic footprint, types of communities that they want to serve. So anytime I've seen plenty of these announcements where a particular federal funding entity will retract a funding opportunity, and once they re-release it, it's so much red tape that you need to, dedicate some time to read through line by line to see how that impacts you. Okay. Also, I want you to be able to, while we're in this time and things are moving, but at a very different pace, and you may have more of a lead time to make adjustments, is to show your capacity to manage complex projects. So anytime you're navigating the federal grant space, again, we talked about more complex applications and more complex types of programs to meet that high, how should I say it? To meet their changes and to meet their expectations, take this time to navigate how can we change, shift, and revise our programs to meet the need, but not at the cost of resources, staff time, and funding. Do it within your capacity. And last but not least, just make sure you're planning around longer lead times, reimbursement structures, and any sudden changes. So again, what I would just encourage you all to do is to be nimble, be flexible, and also be diverse in your grant making strategy. And across both, so regardless if it's private or federal, remain consistent in any work that you're all are doing. Always keep some time on your calendar to search for new grants. There's so many different tools out there that you can navigate. And with the use of AI, it makes it even easier if you don't want to use a particular tool. Pursue funders that are mission aligned with you, and we'll talk about that in just a few slides. Develop reusable, high quality proposal content. I can scream that from the mountaintops. When it comes to how often we have to churn out grant proposals, there's absolutely no reason that we need to start from scratch every time. Think about the content that at its very basic form can help you at least start an application. And if you are a solo writer, you can adjust according to the funder priorities. And if you're open to using AI tools, that could be useful for the context that you put into the tool to then give you more specific outputs. In addition, track those funding trends and adjust frequently. So subscribe to different nonprofit newsletters, experts on LinkedIn. I talk a lot about it on my LinkedIn, and you all will be able to connect with me as well. And any other place where you know that you'll get accurate and knowledgeable information on how to navigate these changes. And try your best to just understand how how our political ecosystem can impact grants. So election cycles, policy changes, things like that can affect funding priorities and timelines. And as always, be on the lookout for new opportunities, even if they aren't through traditional methods. So look out for that email from your executive director, or next time you're at a fundraising event and someone says, hey, you should apply for this grant, just always keep an open eye and open ear out for those grant opportunities that may prove to be beneficial for you. Now, I do want to explore different types of grants. I know we talked about federal grants, so this doesn't necessarily apply there. But when it comes to that private, more community benefit space, well, community foundation and corporate space, let's talk about some different grant types per program or by program, or focus. So first, I want you all to think about those program or project grants. And these are grants that are linked to specific initiatives, offering funding to achieve certain outcomes. So think your after school programs, think your workforce development programs, things that you have a tailored staff or a curriculum, or that is time phased, has a logic model, and you're able to specifically map out what change looks like and what touch points look like from A to Z. Next, there's capacity building or technical assistance grants. And these are grants that can assist your organization in improving your skills, improving efficiencies, and just overall capabilities to play a vital role in your organization's growth and sustainability. Three, general operating grants are my favorites. This is your most flexible option simply because it helps you receive funding to go where it needs to go. It typically doesn't come with red tape. The fund is just like, hey, here's $50,000, just as an example, for you to use on salaries, overhead, things like that, wherever you need those dollars to go. So again, one of my personal favorites. Four are capital grants, and these are grants that are designed specifically for acquiring or enhancing your organization's physical assets, such as your buildings or equipment. Five are these are, excuse me, seed grants are more useful for smaller or newer organizations, and this is ideal for launching new initiatives and just helping you kickstart projects that exhibit potential. And last but not least, I always find this helpful to share, although we're in the nonprofit space, if you are a solopreneur or know of a for-profit entity that wants to get into grants, these type of grants are designed to aid in business growth and typically range to cover needs from operational expenses to development, and it helps us to keep our economy going. So it's always really helpful to add them to the conversation as well. And by understanding these various types, you'll be better equipped to identify which type of grant aligns with your organization's objectives. And in this next section, I just wanted to show you all this research report that talk about what types of grants have higher success rates than others. So as you see on this chart, identifying the right type of grant can significantly improve your chances of funding. So as you can see, we have training, capacity building, education and outreach, program and project capital, and general operating expenses. And thanks to my friends over at Instrumental for putting this all in one space. But as you can see, training and capacity building grants are the grants with the highest success rate. And if you look into the trends, it's typically because they're often forgotten about, right? Everyone's going after education or program project grants and even general operating, but they're forgetting about there's opportunities around capacity building that still, again, build on your revenue, but also lead to organizational capacity, sustainability, and growth. And actually, I've worked with clients who received capacity building or TA grants that were able to hire me as a consultant. So as you can see, be mindful of the type of grants that you go after. And while these have good success rates, right, you tend to get higher success rates on grants that have the least competition simply because, you know, we don't think about it as much as we should. But as we are flexible and we're navigating this diverse pool of grant opportunities, it's just something to be mindful of. All right. So now that we've gone through the type of grants that you can look into to diversify your grant strategy. Before you do any of that, before you put pen to paper, before you put any type of work into applying, I want you all to think about the concept of grant readiness. And grant readiness is simply your ability to find, write, win, and manage grant funding. When I think of grant readiness, I tend to think of it as you're building a house, right? So anytime you're building a house from the ground up, you need a solid foundation. So this means we have the proper infrastructure, we have the concrete laid, we have all of the beams and everything stable in place before we're building on that next level. It's crazy to try to build a second floor if we don't have a solid foundation, right, y'all? So when it comes to grant readiness, think of this and apply it as the proper infrastructure that your organization has to make applying for grants easy, finding grants easy, and managing grants easy. So think about the entire grants life cycle. So this includes things like a clear program strategy, a strategic plan, a strong team. And by strong, I mean having the capacity to manage grants, simply because even if you are to win a grant that you wrote, grants turn into what we all understand as like grant agreements, and those are contractual agreements. So whatever you write in their grant, and there again, we talked about flexibility, but try to stick as close to what you wrote in the grant because those turn into legal contracts with the funder. So make sure we have capacity to execute and manage is always a good thing. And then last but not least, this is often forgotten about, having good financial management. So when funders ask for those 990s, they ask for audited financial statements. They're just not asking us for attachments for the sake of sending an attachment. They want to see how you've navigated financially over the last couple of years to see or to assess, I'll say, risk financially. But again, as long as you have those relationships in place and you're finding the right funders, it's ways to navigate that as well. And as a bonus, if you are thinking about hiring a consultant, being grant ready is a crucial step to help you raise and save more money because we don't have to draft those documents, get those programs and other things ready for you. And it'll save you time, again, money, and just stress when it comes to submitting grants. So now that you all understand what it means to be grant ready, I wanted to talk about a few strategies on how to develop and foster relationships with grant makers. So the first strategy that I want to encourage you to implement is to know who you are. Knowing who you are as an organization is the first step in developing those authentic relationships. And that means just having a clear understanding of your organization's background and identity. When we go through these exercises, particularly here at SMP, we make sure that our clients know and can articulate very clearly in a way that can be understood what their mission is, what their vision is, and what their value statements are. Those are the core pieces of, like I like to call it, clarifying your core. And anytime you have a well-developed organizational identity, it just serves as a safeguard against the temptation of conforming to the expectations of every funder, and preventing that scenario that can happen when we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, if you catch my drift. And also to further illustrate that, just as an internal funny, I like to say, it's like the process of dating. Dating represents more than one person, but you have to be clear on who you are to know who you can, walk alongside and partner with to, and whose really values align to really get the most out of a mutual relationship and partnership. And strategy number two, in order to build transformative relationships and win grants, you have to be able to fully articulate your work in a way that shows tangible value and long-term positive impact on the community that you serve. So once we know who we are, we also have to articulate what we do in such a way that it compels partnership, and in a way can stand on its own. Like the proof is in the pudding, as my niece would like to say. And you're able to do this by knowing, again, we talked about strategic plans and logic models. We know our impact because we've taken the time to strategically map out what we want to do, the impact it's going to have, and who we're going to serve. One thing that we always set as a priority in any type of partnership or client engagement is that we are not the experts when it comes to your organization. Now, we're the grant experts, we know best practices, but when it comes to being nonprofit leaders, program directors, and folks who are really boots on the ground, you know your community, you've gotten to know them so well. And what we're doing is just adding our expertise to that. But you know what you bring to the table in order for us to be effective as well. And strategy number 3, knowing how to tell your story. One thing that I want you all to take away from our conversation today, if you don't remember anything else, is that you won't win grants by pulling on the funder's heartstrings alone, but again, taking that vision and knowing how to articulate it. So a lot of times we're writing grants, we're like, oh, this is emotionally powered language. We know how to, compel. Everyone should invest, but heartstrings is just one part of the form, or pulling on heartstrings is just one part of the formula. I also want you to articulate and activate on that vision. So using those hard metrics, making sure that you are specific and showing a crimson thread through your application from A to Z is going to help you with that. And in the fund development world, this is all done through your messaging, which is your pitch to nonprofit funders. And the purpose of all of this really is just to show a strong case for support that encourages partnership and investment. And when it comes to authentic grant writing, especially in the I'll say this great reset that we're navigating, I want you all, and I'm encouraging you all very strongly to lean into language that is asset-based and won't be harmful or unrealistic for anyone reading it. And here are 3 tips to make sure that you're navigating this with an asset-based lens. And I know this session we are talking about relationships, but I cannot leave you all without just some practical proposal writing tips. And let's go through those. So 1, have a clear vision for change. I know you're like, Shalia, this is redundant, but it always bears repeating. You won't pull on those heartstrings, y'all, but we have to activate and articulate our vision through a strong program plan. 2, eliminate any harmful language. Unfortunately, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, we've gotten used to writing emotional stories and poverty-stricken narratives, so much so to the point where more traditional writers feel that it compels funders to support us, but it doesn't necessarily reflect the strengths and the assets of the community we serve. And we want to make sure that we're putting those we serve at the center of our narrative and dismantling this harmful practice. And 3, my mantra, be client-centric, but funder-aware. So what does this mean? Making sure we're using people-first language, or in the event you don't feel comfortable using people first language or trying it out and just navigating this new space, experience or perspective first language. So you're able to tell a story to funders that shares what your clients, your participants, your students, the folks that you serve, telling them what they encounter in a way that's not disempowering, and make sure that, again, they are at the center of the story. But alongside that, of course, we know funder priorities, and we have to show how the work we do matches with their with their focus. So we want to make sure we have this ease of readability in the sense that you're assuming that funders are generalists. And when I say that, that means eliminating any jargon or industry specific jargon or internal language that you use that only folks within your organization or within your community would know, but simplifying it so much so that you can, it's kind of like the ELI 5, like explain it to me like I'm 5 concept, but in a way that articulates impact so simply that it mirrors that you're doing the work you have that alignment in priorities, and shows funders that you all have a solid initiative and project that they can invest in comfortably. So the point that I want to drive home for today's conversation is that the words you write have more impact than you can imagine. And as responsible nonprofit professionals, as we're in this grant seeking space, especially as we're ever evolving, I want us all to do our part in advancing equitable philanthropy, being mindful of the deliverables, proposals, and things that we produce, our motives, and making sure we're just always keeping an eye out for how we will impact our clients, our communities, and our stakeholders. All right. So for this list, I know we went through a lot of different theory and concepts, but I wanted to cap off this section with practical ways to find the right funding partners. Of course, the standard, which is why you don't see it on the screen. Make sure that you use tools, quality tools that will allow you to not only see the funding opportunities that a particular funder has, but is also able to show you any type of contact information, things like that. So think more traditional, right? Emails, addresses, phone numbers. That is always a good start, but you need a good opportunity or grant scanning tool to do that. My particular favorite is Instrumental, but there's so many others out there if you just want to explore. Um, Always also look into leveraging your social media and personal networks to engage with funders. So in this work, y'all, there are no silos. Connect with other organizations, get out in your community and do things that allow you to connect with others, because a lot of the times you'll find that if let's just for example, the ABC nonprofit down the street found this great funder, thought that they were a fit, but they weren't, and now they want to share that with others who may be a better fit. So again, we're not operating in silos here. Um, when you're utilizing social media, it's not just a place for us to post our events, or our thoughts and processes, things like that that we typically look for when we come on social media to scroll, but use it strategically. I know personally for LinkedIn, I know that's more of a conversation piece, but that's something that's really, it's a lot of magic in there, y'all, when we can utilize our social media platforms to have conversations, even from a nonprofit space. And I know that's kind of tricky with marketing departments and organizational branding, but if there's a way that we post thought-provoking content, you'll be so surprised at the other organizations, the other individuals, and all types of folks who will engage with your content. And you may find a new thought partner there and someone that you can collaborate with. With your personal networks. Again, I love LinkedIn. If you know someone that knows someone that knows someone, that is a place for us to make that connection. Sometimes you don't even have to use LinkedIn. Folks can just pick up the phone, but LinkedIn is usually the most, how should I say this? User-friendly way for folks to make connection or have a quick chat without having to go back and forth on the phone. In a real life scenario or use case of this for us here at S&P is that for every grant strategy that we deliver to a client, we don't believe in deliverables for the sake of deliverables. There's always an educational or a relationship building component with it. So we compile this list, and with the contact information, we're sharing that list with our clients and having them, as well as some of their lead staff and their board, through their LinkedIn's to see if there's any connection. So first, second, third, we don't care, to see if they know that person on a level where, you can exchange a message or so and say, hey, this is the work that we're doing. You came up in our research. I would love to have a conversation. And that's a free way, y'all. It just, well, it's free in the sense of financially. It just takes a bit of time, but utilize those social and personal networks as much as you can. Two, craft a compelling one pager. So when we talk about an elevator pitch, Sometimes you'll have an opportunity to do it through conversation, but other times they may be in passing, pass off that one pager, or they just want you to, funders just want you to submit a one pager via email so they can review. There's always a way to condense information. And the way that I like to walk through this step by step is, again, knowing who you are. So telling your organizational background, a bit of your history, the work that you do, and the impact from that work is all relevant and all appropriate information for that one pager, as it shows funders and potential funding partners in the institutional landscape that they should invest in your mission. And that's an easy way to do it. And last but not least, follow up and cultivate relationships over time. You all heard me say this earlier. Grants are a long game. If you are looking for grants to fund any immediate gaps, meaning like you need the money tomorrow, it may not be the best funding strategy. And I don't want anyone to walk away discouraged. But if you are looking into what your strategy looks like to either replace, fill a gap, or just expand your funding plan for next year, or even let's say by the end of this year, if you know, for some funders who can turn their decisions around that quickly, grants are a good fit. But just be mindful that it does take time. And it even takes more time when you want to add the relationship building aspect to it. And if you're like me, for the folks in the room, this is what I call a light bulb moment. If you are introverted, if you do not like picking up the phone and you're like, Shalia, I just want to be behind the computer screen all day and typing my ideas, getting them approved and submitted. I get it. I hated funder calls as I when I first got started. Because again, I started in the lab. Y'all didn't, you know, I love people, but having to engage and having all that pressure just wasn't my thing. But I grew to love it because one, it was needed and necessary as we're resource mobilizers. There's certain things with this job that we do to bring in those resources and partner with folks and learn the value of relationships. But I also got to do it on my own terms. So in addition to thinking through the traditional methods, right? So making phone calls, having funder cultivation meetings one-on-one, there are other innovative ways that you could do this over time and systemize it, if that makes sense. And one way I've seen that currently are through funder lunch and learns. So these are standing community type meetings that you can host once per quarter, where you invite funders, whether current or potential, or and even past, especially if you want them to fund you again in the future, on the work that you're doing and sharing that impact in a way that hate to say it, kills two birds with one stone, but helps you be impactful, utilize your resources well, and takes the pressure off of us introverted folks. So just some, you know, tips and tricks around how to practically connect in a way that does not go beyond your capacity or bandwidth. And for this last slide, and we'll have some time for questions. So Ashley, after this, feel free to navigate, because we'll do the freebie, then the Q&A. I wanted to do a recap. So hopefully today you walked away with some tips, very practical tips rather, and tricks to help you navigate this grant writing space that we find ourselves in currently. And I wanted to provide just some takeaways that only the pros know, but bears repeating throughout this conversation. So for writing effective narratives, let's go through those. You don't always have to start from scratch. Use every grant writing template that you have at your disposal. If you don't have a formal library or boilerplate template for every grant that you write, and you're like, oh, I love how we mapped out this logic model, or I love how we framed our conversation or lessons learned, add that to a centralized document. Google Docs is great, but if you like to use Microsoft or any other means, just somewhere where folks can access it, and copy and paste as the base, again, base, not the final product, as needed. If you utilize like an AI tool, such as like ChatGPT, Perplexity, and even Instrumental, they have document libraries that you can place certain documents and sections in to serve as your base, and then the system, the LLM, will help you produce prompts as well. So that's been really fun to explore, if you're open to using technology in that manner. Again, we talked about avoiding biased language and using storytelling techniques to engage funders emotionally, but balanced with technical details. So, in the age of AI, in the age of copy and paste, and being able to do our work faster, always maintain that human in the loop approach. So we have the boilerplates, we have the context, and it gets us a first draft fast, but continue to revise, and review any outputs and make those changes to make sure that we are community centric in a human in the loop fashion. Incorporate data, updated data to substantiate your claims. So a lot of times when we are writing grants, we tend to just copy and paste using the same numbers, but always check in with your program folks and your leads to update when you do reports or community check-ins to further amplify your data. And avoid common mistakes like failing to follow proposal instructions, not checking out the eligibility requirements, and things like that. So simple, but again, bears repeating that we keep a mind for technicalities in this landscape. And for tailoring proposals that stand out, we talked about it. Be mindful, be nimble, be flexible. Research funders whose priorities align with your goals and their goals. So there's some alignment there and some synergy. Use terminology that is both understandable to a general audience, but specific enough to show connection and experience with the focus areas and any specific community that the funder wants to specifically invest in. So, again, tips and tricks. Make sure you take a screenshot of this if you want to do a recap and share it with your folks who couldn't attend the webinar today. And in the meantime, because I know the recording's coming out, but I wanted to share those with you all in a very practical way and go into some details to support you in all of these changes that we're experiencing. So please stick around. We have more great content and Q&A to capture on, but I'll turn it over to Ashley to drive us home.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Shalia, for such great tips and tricks and great overall content. I really like what you had to say about being client centric, but funder aware at the same time. I think that that's super important for folks on the line and folks not on the line, finding that balance of wanting to make sure that you're still appealing to the people that you're asking, but also want to share your story and share the work that y'all are doing. So it's super important. So thanks for sharing all of that with us, folks. Folks on the line, before we transition to Q&A here, I did want to just ask again, if you are interested in learning more about Bonterra and are interested in learning about some of our tools that might be able to help you manage your grants and just manage the funding that you have coming in general, launching another quick poll here, please feel free to fill that out. And then, like I mentioned earlier, once we wrap up here, we'll have our colleagues reach out to you to initiate those conversations, answer those questions, so on and so forth. But while folks are filling that out here, want to see, it doesn't look like we have any questions coming through quite yet in the Q&A or chat, which to me also always means that the information was laid out perfectly and clearly, which is fantastic. But we'll give folks a little bit of time to kind of trickle in their questions.
Okay.
Shalia, I'm not sure if you wanted to share. Oh, it looks like we have a question come in. Let's see. Jesse asked for invitation only funders, which seem to be more and more common. If we do have a connection via LinkedIn, board, another organization, et cetera, is there a best practice on how to use this warm connection to be invited to apply? Should we write a letter, email, call, et cetera? Really great question.
Yes. So that is a really good question. If you have someone who can serve as I call it warm navigator, please utilize them. So, for example, if I'm searching for a grant from the ABC Foundation and Ashley is my connection, maybe she serves on the board, maybe um, uh, her and the foundation president attended the Y at the same time. I'm going to ask Ashley, well, I'm going to inform her on the work that we're doing and what we're looking for. Hey Ashley, I saw this person, these folks on LinkedIn. Can you tell me more about them? What should I be mindful of? Because typically anytime we have that connection, there's so much in the know because we're all in this together, y'all. They can give you that general insight, general information, or at the very least can tell you if they're open to a chat or serve as that person to make the connection. So like I said, at the very least, Ashley can inbox that person, call that person, especially if they've been at the YMCA for years, and say, "Hey, I know of this awesome nonprofit that I would love to connect you to. I'm not sure what your priorities are, but would you be open to having a coffee chat for about 15 minutes?" Then Ashley can come back and report to me and let me know what those next steps are. And that's more formal. And you typically see this type of process in more local foundations than you do those who are not in your geographic footprint or who are national. In the event that they're further out or not as close in proximity to you, those funder recaps or funder meetings around recently released opportunities are always really good. People don't tend to attend them for more than knowing what the application needs and what makes for a highly scored proposal. But I like to stick around to the end like a Marvel movie because most of the time they'll share with you the email, and depending on how generous, flexible their team is, you can stick around on the Zoom and ask them questions in real time. And folks are, like I said, funders are people, especially on the all of them are people, but when you are in the private side, you tend to see more flexibility. Um, they'll invite you to a further conversation. So sometimes program directors will, schedule a 15-minute chat, or, they'll say, reach out to our admin assistant who then can, set up an appointment for you to ask more questions to explore synergy and things like that. So even if they are invite only, um, your main question is how can we be part of, maybe not right now, but in the future, of this list of organizations that you want to invite for this funding pool. And anytime that particular funder has an opportunity for you to connect with them, whether personally or through those sessions, and it happens, it's rare, but it happens, stick around to the end like a Marvel movie would be my suggestion. Really
Great
great question.
suggestion. You always have to stay to the end. You never know what you're going to
You
find
never
at
know.
the end. Looks like we had a question come in from Robert. Robert asked, besides asking AI, are there any other tips and tricks you have for finding foundations, private foundations that might, award funding?
So, Robert, I will say AI isn't going anywhere. And while you may not use a LLM model like a Chat GPT or a Perplexity, most tools now, maybe with the exception of Candid and Grant Station, I'll have to double check, so please don't hold me, utilize some type of AI matching system, but it's still in their own original format. So I would say utilize a tool that you're comfortable with. If you absolutely prefer not to use AI at all, rather in the setting of your search parameters, um, or how they qualify leads, just do deep research on the tool. Most tech platforms have a help desk or a free session on how to walk through it that help you feel more comfortable. But there are tools out there that are more user friendly than others, or just are more, I would say, less techy to use. So Instrumental is AI powered now. I'm not sure again about Grant Station or Candid, but there are other websites too that you could use, like Grants.io, and any list serve that you can find that's relevant for your priority area would be useful. And that doesn't use AI. That's just a simple like newsletter. So I hope that answers your question. But I do think that we'll see a trend of more grant seeking tools utilizing AI in some fashion, even if you're not directly utilizing it to set your search parameters yourself.
Right. Great point. Great point. Looks like we're waiting for some additional questions to trickle in. Folks, please
Okay.
feel free to drop them in. We have a couple minutes left with Shalia. While those questions are rolling in, Shalia, I don't know if you wanted to talk about your community and
Okay.
the offering that you mentioned. And then if there are any additional ones, we can touch on those. But if not, we might wrap a couple minutes.
Okay, sounds good. So, because you all have been so amazing today, and like Ashley said, uh, there's usually a more engaged audience and very clear information that you're taking in with no questions. I don't want this to stop here. If you're looking to learn grants or wanting to hire a grant writer or working towards that, but want to do it without breaking the bank or wasting time, I want to invite you all to join my free version of my grant writing community called Starting from Scratch. This isn't another program. This isn't another subscription, but think of it like your favorite streaming service, but for grants. And in addition to that, you'll get to connect with like-minded peers and experts to make your grant writing journey just as simpler. And because you all stuck around with me to the end today, I want you to take advantage of this 3-day offer where you'll have access to exclusive modules and resources, quick peer support. So let's just say you have questions after our time today, and want to engage in like networking opportunities and an opportunity to have a additional live Q&A with me. Sign up today. You'll have access to module 1, those tools with that, this webinar recording as it comes out in the next couple of days or so, and some post-event discussion in the private group. So you can scan the QR code available here, and I believe it's been dropped through the chat to get access to that right into your inbox. So feel free to sign up for that today. And I look forward to seeing y'all in my community.
Awesome. And we can leave this up, folks, if you're wanting to scan the QR code. But yeah, like Shalia mentioned, I did drop it in the chat just in case that's not working for you all. But it looks like we had a couple of questions come in these last couple of moments here. Michaela asked, do you recommend looking at 990s? Find them to be hit or miss. And I'm guessing Michaela means in finding 990s for folks that give funding and seeing maybe where they're giving funding. Not
Yeah,
exactly sure. But yeah, do you recommend that?
I do. The only drawback that I've seen with looking at 990s is that for some reason, and I laugh about it, please, y'all, bear with me. While we have to turn in our tax information on time as individuals, foundations always don't always follow suit. So you'll have 990s that may be 2 or 3 years old and haven't seen anything since. So just be mindful of how old it is, and those trends may have changed. And if you can't find anything current, always call. Just and in a how should I say, it's a strategic way, you can ask about what their funding trends have looked like in a way that's not like, well, how much have you invested? Like if you don't feel comfortable going that direction. But there are ways that you can strategically frame the conversation to get that information. And if you do have access to more current 990s, depending on the tools that you use, you can assess those trends as well. I love to use, again, Instrumental, but if you have a basic AI tool, you can upload those since it's public information anyway, to set up a prompt for AI to tell you any changes that they've seen. So always good to look at it, but you may not have the updated available information.
Good call out. I know I've seen the old 990s throughout Candid and other engines that provide them. So definitely something to keep in mind. Keep in
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
Looks like Jesse asked another question. Jesse said, you shared the phrase asset-based writing, which I love. The same idea as trauma-informed language. A previous training that Jesse attended mentioned not writing anything about the people that you serve that they wouldn't be proud to or want to read themselves.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. It is all aligned. And one thing that I would take away from both trainings is if I were writing about myself, because we all come to the tables with stories, would I be proud, comfortable, and unashamed of what I am producing for someone else to read about me? Sometimes I think we get so bogged down in the details and we have to write it this way to come off compelling that we miss the purpose of what we're doing altogether. So I'm really grateful that, this is something that is being repeated throughout a lot of different trainings and spaces amongst professionals. Because like I like to say this all the time, we are human beings, we are not human doings. So we have to create space to just be, and that's for ourselves and for the narratives that we're writing on behalf of our community.
I love that. I've heard that one time before on a seminar, we're human beings, not human doings. And I've taken that with me ever since. It's such a
Yes,
great
please
quote
do.
and a great reminder for all of us that are sometimes way in the weeds of things and very focused on things, forgetting life happens outside. We've got family, friends, and so many other things
Yeah,
that are equally as important, if not more important. So
yeah.
definitely keep that in mind, folks. Awesome. Well, it looks like we don't have any other questions. I'll give folks again like a couple more seconds here while we have Shalia. But while anyone's dropping in some last minute questions, Shalia, thank you again so
Thank
much for this
you.
presentation. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Thank you for such great content and taking folks through the journey and explaining things. This was such a great session. And for folks on the line, thank you. Like Shalia mentioned earlier, we don't take it lightly that you chose to spend the hour with us. Thank you so much for doing so. Thank you for your engagement in the chat, thoughtful and insightful questions.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw Shalia, the recommendations that were in the chat too for some shows to watch. If you didn't
Oh,
get to them, I can send them to you afterwards too. Got some good
let
ones
me
in there for
download
you.
now. Thank you.
I can send those over to you if you don't have a screenshot of them afterwards. But
Yes.
again, folks, thank you for your time and your attention this afternoon. We really appreciate it. And we hope to see you at our next session. So with that, thank you again. Hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon and day. And we can't wait to see you at the next one again. Bye
Awesome.
everyone.
Bye bye, everyone. Have a